Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Sarah Stites. Sarah Stites is the co-founder and CEO of Wavelength, a modem program for healthy eating that combines personalized nutrition with mental health tools. She knows firsthand the shame that comes with eating and weight-related issues. She was diagnosed with PCOS and pre-diabetes as a teen, gaining 100 pounds in a year. While diet programs relied on guilt and body shame, her mom, a PhD with a master's degree in nutrition science, helped her take a more compassionate approach. By using principles from behavioral neuroscience, addiction, nutrition, and mindfulness, Sarah was able to understand the root cause of her habits, reverse her pre-diabetes, and lose 150 pounds. That was over 10 years ago. Now Sarah leads the Wavelength team to scale her mom's holistic solution to millions of people. She is a fierce advocate for more science, less blame, and pleasure as an important part of health. She believes it's time to move beyond the concept of body perfection and start focusing on people, helping them to have better times in their bodies instead. Today, we talked about weight loss, healing body shame, de-shaming wellness, wellness industry trends, the neuroscience of behavior change, weight loss myths, and learning to love your body, health at any size. Without further ado, let's dive into this episode with Sarah Stites. I'm excited to welcome Sarah Stites to the Sisterhood of Sweat today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Linda.
I always know it's going to be a good conversation when we get started before the bell rings. And we were talking about a little bit about Sarah and some of her points today. We're really going to focus a lot on body shaming and how we feel about our bodies, regardless of what a certain standard is. And I want to kind of start with getting the audience to know you. So how did regaining the weight you had lost after a weight loss surgery in 2007 influence your approach and understanding about what it takes to change eating behaviors? And even before that, that was a question on, they sent me these nice questions, you guys. But I really want to know, before you got weight loss surgery, where you were at, how you were feeling, and why you got weight loss surgery. And then we'll go to that question.
Yeah, let me just begin at the beginning. I mean, I think like so many women, I learned that my body and my eating were a really big problem, like really young. Like I think honestly, by the time I was in third or fourth grade, I was already comparing my body to the body of my friends. I started dieting at 12, and then I was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome in the sixth grade. And then after experiencing some confusing weight gain at around 15, I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes, and then I gained about 150 pounds my junior year of high school. And like all the advice out there, what I was getting from my doctors, from like, magazines, was just go on a diet, lose weight. And you better believe I was trying. And like 99, I mean, the stats on this are not amazing, but research shows that somewhere between 90 and 99% of all attempts to lose weight through dieting actually fail. I was no exception to that rule. I would try everything from like point systems to, you want to talk about shame, like literally I did public weigh-ins, to like, cleanses where you're just drinking lemon juice and cayenne pepper. Nothing worked for me. And I was really just drowning in the shame of that. Like, so not only was I really deeply ashamed of what I looked like, which I look back and it breaks my heart and it makes me mad. But I was also like drowning in the shame of just feeling like a failure. Like there was something really fundamentally bad or weak about me that I could not just like do what everybody was telling me to do, which was go on a diet. What's my problem? Right. And I was 19. I'd been, it's funny. It's a little funny to look back on it now. It felt like forever, right? It was like 2.5 years, but to a 19-year-old, that's a long time. Um, and I just like, I was desperate. I was at my wit's end and I thought, this can't be what my life looks like. I refuse. And so I had weight loss surgery. And I don't know if folks are familiar, or Linda, if you're familiar, it is no joke. I had something called Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, which is one of the more kind of one of the bigger weight loss surgeries you can get, where they take out part of your stomach, they take out part of your intestines. It's a major surgery, and it was awful. It's some of the worst pain I've ever experienced, and I've been hit by a car.
Oh
um,
my
it was
goodness.
much worse than that. Um, and I lost weight so rapidly in the aftermath that my hair thinned dramatically. I would vomit after most meals. And,
Oh my gosh.
at the time, I really thought, worth it. Oh my God, worth it. Because thank God I'm not fat anymore, which really goes to show you how much it's not about health and it's not about well being. It's really about like shame and appearance, if I was willing to endure something like that. But because my underlying eating behaviors hadn't changed, uh, I kind of hit the bottom. I lost about 80 pounds. And then it started creeping right back in the other direction. And I gained almost all of the weight that I had lost back within 2 years. And if I thought I felt shame before, like, boy, did I feel it now, because, this is allegedly the easy way out. My parents took out a loan so that I could have this surgery. It's expensive. And I couldn't even make that work. The stakes were so high. This was supposed to be easy, and I couldn't even make that work. And it was just like emotional rock bottom for me. I just felt like the biggest failure in the world. And I kept it all a total secret. Like, my friends must have known that something was going on, but I told nobody except my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, and my parents. And I had one friend, Emily, that I told. And so it was just this like secret that I had to keep, this thing that I knew about myself, which is that I basically sucked. And I think I would have stayed there for a long time. But my mom, who has a very similar journey to me, but unlike me, she's got a PhD and a couple of master's degrees, one of which is in nutrition science. She started asking some questions. She was like, all right, I'm really struggling with my weight. I've struggled with my weight and my eating my whole life. The story about this is that it's about self-discipline. But I'm not actually a person that struggles with self-discipline. Like, doesn't show up anywhere else in my life. What's really going on? And so she started really questioning whether this was like a moral failing or something else going on biologically, neurologically. And that's really like when things started to turn around for me.
That's huge. That's awesome. Go mom.
Oh, mom. Yeah.
So what's it living in, you say a fat body? I don't really like to say that, but in a fat body, in a thin body, reveal what did that reveal to you about yourself and about the world? What was the lesson you learned from it that you can impart to everybody listening?
Mhm. Yeah. When I'd love to come back to a conversation about the word fat. But, you know, so there I am. I'm just like really at what I think will probably be a low point of my life forever, which just feeling so bad about myself and really feeling like the solution to all of my problems was going to be losing weight. And when I look back now, I can see that what I actually wanted was like a sense of belonging, a sense of comfort in my own skin, a sense that like how I perceived myself, aligned with how I was actually being perceived by the world, which is really hard, I think, when you're fat, to feel like one version of yourself in your mind and like you're being perceived as this completely other person than who you really are. And then I lost 150 pounds. And what I found when I got to that like end of that journey, if that's a journey that actually ends, is that like I was still the same person. Like my anxieties about parties and my fear that I wasn't perceived as smart enough or pretty enough or whatever it was, those hadn't budged. I wasn't like, I did something no one can do. I lost 150 pounds. I'm amazing. I was like, the mean self-talk hadn't changed. And that's when I really started realizing that like, it's like playing whack-a-mole, right? Like you fix one problem and then the problem becomes something else. If I'm not fat, then I'm upset about the wrinkles that I'm getting. And like, I realized that
Oh my gosh.
I was just really going to have to change how I was relating to my body if I wanted to feel better. And it was a long journey and I'm happy to talk about it. But at the end of the day, like where I am now is in a place of a lot, I think a lot more comfort with myself. And that really came not from losing the weight, but from the work that I did after that.
So the fear of acceptance is big,
Yeah.
and fearing that people won't accept us the way that we are because it's not, we think we're afraid it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And like you said, you lost 150 pounds, but like then maybe you're going to worry about the wrinkles. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really just then boils down to that fear of not being good enough, fear of what other people are going to think,
Yeah.
fear of people aren't going to accept you. So how did you do that work? That's what I think people want to know, because you are not alone by any stretch of the imagination. I go to fitness competitions where there's beautiful women, beautiful girls, and they don't have that confidence and that self-esteem, and like they're competing, but then when they're not competing, they feel horrible about themselves if they lose one pack of their six pack. And in really, they think that that's all about the way they look, but really it
Mm-mm.
isn't. There's a deeper lying reason. And I think getting to that could free a lot of people today. And we talk a lot about, our bodies, body shaming, feeling okay with ourselves. And I just really want to help people today to feel okay with themselves.
Yeah. So I think that, body positivity is everywhere. It's selling magazines and underwear and like everything. And I think that there's a lot of value to that because it's a lot more rare than it used to be that I look at a clothing brand that only sells women, only shows me pictures of really thin women. And that's great. But I think that body positivity as it exists right now is really missing the mark when it talks about how to really let go of that shame, right? We tend to want, like, the message is that you should start with gratitude, right? Make a gratitude list, focus on what your body can do, look in the mirror and focus on parts of your body that you like. But this is the goal, right? This isn't where most people are starting. And I started doing that because that's what's out there, right? So I would try to connect to feelings about gratitude for what my body can do. My body can walk, my body can run, whatever it is. And I was getting nowhere. I was like, honestly, like this feels like some BS. I'm not connecting to this. And
Oh, I know people, yeah, out there they don't realize that it is a big deal. It takes a little practice and it takes a little work. But when you're counting your blessings, you're not comparing yourself to others.
what I found is that my shame was so intense that I needed some intermediary steps before I got there. And
Well,
rather than,
let's back up just for a second. Where do
sure.
you think that shame stems from? Like, if you are willing to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think part of it's cultural, right? Women are taught from such an early age that their value is in their appearance. But
Oh my goodness.
I also think that, like, if I'm being honest, my mom, who was also my salvation, played a huge role. And I'm sure that the people listening to this, that this is going to resonate with them too, because our moms, our parents just play the such an integral role in our formation of our ideas about who we are as people. And my mom was fat. She was fat her whole life. And I think that it loomed really large in her mind as a major source of pain for her. And her mother was deep, who was not overweight, was deeply unkind to my mother about it. And I learned from my mom from a really early age that being fat was the worst thing you could be, right? And so when it happened,
Oh, now that makes sense.
yeah, and when it happened to me, it felt like the worst thing that ever could have happened. And it really affected not just what I thought about what I looked like, right? Because presumably that can just be a part of you, right? Just like we all have to come to terms with aging, and all have to come to terms with aspects of ourselves that maybe we wish were different. Not all of those really affect us with deep shame, where we think we don't deserve love, we don't deserve affection. That the word I used to use the word disgusting with myself all the time. I couldn't put my body in the larger context of who I was. It was everything about my value. Who would ever love me? Who would ever find me attractive? Who would ever want to like be around me or think I was smart? It just really eroded me at my core. And it took, probably 10 years of like deep work and reflection to really get over that. I think it doesn't have to take that long.
No, but you know
But
what? Whatever time it takes is the time it takes.
yeah. And so to kind of like close the loop on our earlier conversation, Linda, like what instilled this shame in me, I think, was watching my mom's shame and her fear for what was going to happen to me, and then to have that happen. And so the journey to dealing with that shame wasn't to start with gratitude, because I was in such a deep hole about it. It was first to recognize that it was shame, right? That was actually the first step, because the thing that's so insidious about shame is that it sounds true. It just sounds astute. Like, thank God there's a voice in my head that recognizes how disgusting I am, because otherwise I might be going around the world acting like I'm not disgusting, not knowing my place. So the first thing you have to say is like, hey, that's not a true thought. That's a shame thought. And once you kind of realize, all right, that mean voice is shame, then you can start to unwind it a little bit. And so I think, like, a good rule of thumb for identifying whether an internal critical voice is shame driven or just correct is like, how would you feel if you heard someone saying it to their child? Like, if you heard a mom telling her daughter that she was disgusting, you would be horrified, right?
Yeah.
It's a good way to tell whether your internal monologue is shame driven. And then once you get there, sort of not trying to argue with that monologue, not saying, I'm not disgusting, look at what my body can do, I'm a whole person, but instead just saying, I'm not extra bad, I'm normal bad, I'm regular. And just knowing that the experience you're having is one that is shared by millions and millions of women, that was actually really relieving to me. If you are out there listening and you're like, okay, check, yes, I have a shame-based inner monologue about my body and my eating, I would never approve of someone saying it to their child. The next step is just like, look, 80% of women in this country report to the CDC that they are trying to lose weight. 80% of women report that they struggle in their relationship to food and their body. So if you're not struggling, that puts you in the minority. Most women are dealing with this. You're not extra bad. You're just regular, just like the rest of us. And once you can kind of see the whole picture, like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with this, but my neighbor and my teacher and my friend, everyone is struggling with this. This is maybe part of what it means to be a woman in our society right now. You can start to maybe get some space between you and that voice. And eventually you can get to gratitude. I definitely feel gratitude for what I look like. I feel gratitude for what my body can do now. I'm able to wear sleeveless shirts and shorts, which I never would have let myself do before. So I'm able to be physically comfortable, but it's a journey. And just starting with recognition that you're normal can be a really powerful first step.
So good, so good. And I want to back up to what you said earlier about you felt like you couldn't be accepted if your appearance was in a certain way. What have you learned about that, and how did that change?
Yeah, I want to like sit with this. I want to make sure I really answer this question. I think what happened was that I was able to put my appearance back in its lane. Like, it's not that I never feel.
You thought it was your value, is that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I really thought it was my value. And now I see that so much of my value has nothing to do with what I look like. And the relationships that are the most valuable to me, my appearance is not that relevant. And like, we've all had this experience of like forming an opinion about someone's appearance early on in meeting them. And then the longer you know them, it really fades into the background, which isn't to say that our appearance doesn't impact our experience of the world. Obviously it does. People treat you differently based on what you look like. This is not all in your head, but the things that are really valuable in your life are valuable irrespective of what you look like. And so it was a recognition that I am a whole person with, there goes the cat again. I'm going to pause. Stanley, I'm so sorry. This is really abnormal. Give me one second.
Her cat is giving her crap back there.
Great. All right, the cat has been locked in the bathroom. we should be undisturbed now.
Everyone loves you already that has cats.
I mean, I'd take comfort. Like I said, want to eradicate shame, just know everybody has a cat during the pandemic. It's dealt with this issue.
She wants attention.
Desperately. All he wants is to feel accepted and like he belongs. So it was really about understanding that I am a person with a wide array of experiences. What I look like is one of those experiences. And it just helped me see myself as a whole person. It helped me get off that kind of hamster wheel of body shame. If it's not one thing, it's another. And, what's interesting about that is that once you can kind of take the shame lens off of what you look like, it's so much easier to appreciate it, right? It's so much easier for me to look in the mirror and think, okay, I look pretty good today, which is not something that ever happened before. But that's not the starting place, if you know what I mean.
Yes. So I know a lot of people do feel this body shame because we talk about it, and it's a consistent topic among women where, they feel like they shame themselves because they're also feeling like not good enough. That would be a word. But how does this shame keep us from reaching our actual health goals that we have?
Yeah, great question. So humor me while we dive into the science for just a moment. So there's evidence to suggest that the processes in our brain that are happening when we feel ashamed, because every emotion that we have, right, is corresponds to some neurological process that's happening. There's evidence to suggest that when those processes are running in our brains, we actually can't build new behaviors. And so when you feel ashamed, it actually becomes harder at a biological, neurological level to make the changes that you want to make. We also know about the body that there are really motivation, our desire to do something, our ability to pursue a goal is really complicated. There are a lot of parts of our brain and nervous system involved in motivation, but you can divide it into really two different kinds of motivation, what we call motivation away from something and motivation towards something. So motivation away from something is not so dissimilar from like running from something scary or avoiding a negative experience. When we experience shame, let's say you look at a picture of yourself and you think like, oh God, I can't believe that's what I look like. How did I get here? An experience so many of us have had. And then you are like, all right, diet starts tomorrow. Next. That is motivation away from something. And what we know about that is that it doesn't last very long. So for you, this probably, not you in particular, but for anybody who's dieted, right? We know that experience of like, you can be dead set. You can be like, tomorrow, it's counting calories, it's salads only, it's the gym every day. And then like 3 days later, when that sense of shame isn't as acute anymore, all of a sudden it's not top of mind, or maybe you think of it and you're not doing it anymore. The neurological process that had gotten you so motivated has come to an end. But there is a different kind of motivation toward that has, from a neurological perspective, much more sustainable. And it sounds cheesy, but it's actually what we call hope, right? It's a real belief in yourself that a different outcome, a different way of being is possible for you. And what happens when we activate these motivational processes in the brain is that we have a really strong emotional response to it. So like, imagine for a moment how it would really feel to accomplish that goal. Feel the emotional state that you're seeking, whether it's, a sense of belonging, whether it's a sense of power in your body, whatever it is. If you can tap into that affirmative desire for where you want to go, that does not wane over time. That is something that is renewable. And if we touch that motivation, if we touch that hope, we can keep going. And honestly, changing the way you eat, losing weight, really any behavior change is a long game. We're not talking about doing something perfectly for 3 months and then being done. We're talking about making choices that prioritize you and your goals over and over again for years. And it really requires this different belief in what's possible for you. And so that is really like at the core of our approach to changing behavior, losing weight is really helping identify in people what it is that's really driving them. What's the core longing of what they want?
So how did you stop equating your value with a number on the scale?
Yeah, it's a long journey. People have different relationships with the scale. I really found that recognizing that it was just a number and then weighing myself frequently was very helpful, because then I could untether what I was doing from the number, right? We all know that experience of like, I ate one weird thing, or it seems like I did nothing at all, and I was up 7 pounds. And once you really understand that that happens, and it may not have anything to do with anything you've done. It could be your hormones, it could be the heat, irritating water, it could be a little bit of salt that you ate, but it's not the end of the world. And a lot of this is actually a little bit outside of your control. It's easier to let go. Other people take a different route and they don't get on the scale anymore. They're really focused on the emotional goals and marking progress towards how they feel in their body, what they're able to do. So it's really about what feels right to you. So I think if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking, should I weigh myself every single day? Should I get off the scale? I think the question is, do you have to brace yourself to get on the scale? Are you afraid of it? Do you find that you're doing things to like hack it? Like, oh, I'll just wait to get on the scale until I've had a few days on my diet. Or let me, go to the bathroom and take off all my clothes before I get on. That might be a good sign that you should get off the scale for a little while and find another way to measure your progress. Because like, then that number on the scale is really just data. It doesn't say anything about what you're capable of, it doesn't say anything about how attractive you are, it doesn't say anything about how healthy you are. Truly, none of these things. And so if you need to give yourself a little bit of space to acclimate to that idea by not weighing yourself, I highly recommend it.
And it's just really a manipulation. I think what really freed me from being a slave to the scale was during competition when we would drink a gallon of water, like 2 gallons of water, which is 16 pounds of water going through you.
My goodness.
So, because a gallon is 8 pounds. So if you are drinking 16 pounds times 3 days, you're manipulating your weight. I definitely didn't weigh to the end of that 3 days, and then I'd always be 10 pounds down. And what it really showed me was how weight really is a manipulation of food, water, exercise, and taking a poo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So knowing that you can manipulate it, it should never equate our value, and your value doesn't come from some number that goes up and down like a yo-yo.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people need to recognize. Why did weight loss become a dirty word for you?
I wouldn't say weight loss is a dirty word for me, but I do think it's become a little bit of a dirty word. I think women now are really in between a little bit of a rock and a hard place, where on the one hand, they are, to be a good woman, you're supposed to be able to love yourself now. Isn't that the rule? Like, I am supposed to feel X way about my body. I'm supposed to be able to recognize that my weight's not my value. I'm supposed to be body positive. I'm supposed to love myself as I am. But they're getting that message at the exact same time that they're getting the message that they can't be fat, they can't be ugly, they can't get old, they can't be unhealthy. And so women are
because
really,
if you're old, you lose your value, right?
yes,
No.
absolutely. And women, I think, are really stuck right now because we're not allowed to try to be healthier. Of course, to some extent, this is hyperbolic, but there's pressure not to be perceived to try to lose weight, not to be perceived to try to look different. At the same time that there's all this pressure to look different and lose weight. And so we're in the midst of a little bit of a cultural war. And what I really felt this in my 20s. It was really at the beginning of the body positive movement, which was so attractive to me. But I also felt, just another thing to add to the shame party. Now I felt ashamed of wanting to lose weight. And what I wish I had existed was something out there that helped me navigate that tension, that helped me say, like, all right, I want to get healthier. I need to change the way that I am eating. And frankly, I want to lose weight, but I don't want it to be about body perfection. I don't want it to be rooted in shame. I want it to be about me and what I want and what makes me feel good. And so I think that rather than treating weight loss as an enemy in and of itself, we can recognize that it's really context dependent, and weight loss might be a part of you feeling your best. But as long as you're oriented around how can I have the best time in the body that I've got, instead of how can I make myself look perfect, how can I make there be less wrong with me, then you're on the path to success.
So good. Why is it that our willpower alone is never going to be enough to help us sustain weight loss long term?
Yeah. So we are hardwired to want to eat food, which is good from an evolutionary perspective, right? Can you imagine, like, the genes would not have stayed in the gene pool very long for the folks that didn't care about eating. It's good that we are driven to calorie dense foods. It's good that we want to eat. It's good that eating makes us feel good. But what that means is that our ability to use willpower to override this sort of basic instinct to eat, which exists, which we share across, all kinds of animals, not just people, and exists in a very old part of our brain, that we share, again, with lots of different kinds of animals, our ability to override that by just knowing we ought to do something different is super limited. And you'll notice, like, when you're well resourced, when you've slept well, when your stress is low and things are going well in your life, you might find it easier to make eating choices that are more closely aligned with your goals. And as things take a turn, you get more stressed out, you get sleep deprived, whatever it is, you find yourself relying more and more on food for comfort. Like, a diet is just asking you to eat as to use that willpower to override your eating instincts forever. And you can see how that's just absolutely never going to work. But what can work long term is to really fundamentally change how you're relating to food. So whereas so many of us are drawn to food for comfort, at a neurological habitual level, over time we can actually change that, so that every time you get stressed out, food's not what you're reaching for. Every time something you get a little low on sleep, food's not what you're reaching for. But unless you're making that fundamental change to basically the way your brain's wired, you're going to have to rely on willpower, and it's just not going to get you where you want to go.
So what are your thoughts then around intuitive eating and the anti-diet movement?
Yeah. So intuitive eating, for those listeners who may not know, it's guided by the principle that dieting and a lifetime of dieting has really disrupted our relationship with food. And if we can just learn to tap into our body's hunger and satiety cues, our relationship with food will heal. I think that this works really well for certain people. But there's some real limitations. There are some realities of life in our contemporary food system and life in our modern world that mean that, like, tapping into your body is not like accessible to everyone. My body was always like, you should eat 3 Hot Pockets and 2 Diet Cokes over and over again, right? So when we're eating foods that trigger compulsive eating behaviors, or when we have a long history of compulsive eating behaviors driven by stress or loneliness or other emotional triggers, it's important to take a more holistic view, I think, than just intuitive eating. So if you've tried intuitive eating and you're like, I really liked how it was anti-diet, but I didn't lose weight, I didn't make any progress toward my goals, I still fell out of control with food, you're not insane. There's real reason for that. And you can take some of the anti-diet principles of intuitive eating and bring them with you into a plan that acknowledges the way that food can make you eat. Certain foods can trigger compulsive eating, certain stress can trigger compulsive eating, and you can take kind of a hybrid approach.
So how can we hope to improve our health and navigate all the confusing, often contradictory landscape out there of nutrition advice, all of the different, when I went to integrative school of nutrition, there's 100 different diet theories, which I understand, but how can the average consumer make sense and know what is right for them?
So anybody that's telling you that they've got a magic bullet, that like they've figured it out, and this magic thing that they're going to do is going to solve all your problems, that person is selling you a bill of goods. Because the fact of the matter is that we are complex beings, and what the right way of eating for us is a complex blend of our goals, our lifestyle, our metabolic history. Like, if you're like me and we're diagnosed with pre-diabetes at 15, you're going to want to eat a different diet on a regular basis than somebody that does not have that history. And so I would say be wary of anything that says it's a quick fix, and really look for things that take your lifestyle and livability into account. What we do in Wavelength is everybody gets a customized intake call where you're meeting with one of our coaches that analyzes you on a few different points and then sends you on the right path. And it gets adjusted over time. Because like I said, there's not one quick fix. Your circumstances change, your body change, your goals change. And so it's not one and done. It's really about understanding what makes you feel good, understanding that that might change over time, and then building on top of that.
What comes for everybody after dieting that just wants to improve their health and longevity and their quality of life?
Yeah, I think it's really, it's about changing those patterns that make us feel out of control with food. So, like I mentioned, the stress patterns, the emotional eating patterns, eating the foods that might trigger compulsive eating. It's really about kind of looking at the emotional, looking at the behavioral triggers for why we eat, not just what we eat, and changing those. And then being able to change what we eat will fall out of that. But I like to say giving somebody a diet, whether it's intermittent fasting, just a set of rules, or a food list, just a set of rules, and then like not helping them make the change that on a behavioral and emotional level is like pushing them out of an airplane and then like tossing the parachute after them. It's not good enough. You've got to start with dealing with the emotional relationship with food and dealing with kind of really your relationship with yourself. The good nutritional choices will be a natural outcome of that.
What do you value in a person?
What do I value in a person? I think I have a better understanding of this as I get older, but it's definitely evolves. I really value transparency. I think I really like to know what people are thinking. I really like to know how they're feeling. And so what people are communicative, I really value that. I also really value people who value intimacy. I'm a person who really wants to connect, who really wants to understand what makes other people tick, who really wants to share what makes me tick. I think not everybody values that. And it takes all kinds. But for me, I want people that want to connect.
Love that. Love that. So what would you like to say to all the listeners out there about their value today?
It does not matter who you are. It does not matter what you weigh. It doesn't matter what you do. You're a person with needs, and you deserve to have those needs met. You deserve to rest. You deserve to get pleasure. You deserve to eat. You deserve to have fun. You deserve to be cared for. And nothing you do will ever change that. And if you're out there and you're having a hard time connecting to that idea that you're a person with needs that deserves to be met, I always rest on this idea that you're normal. Whatever that mean inner critic says to you, like, know that you are normal. Know that somebody else has an inner critic that's saying it to them too, and that you're okay just as you are. You deserve to feel good right now.
Perfect. I love that. And then lastly, what do you want to say to anybody out there that has been feeling shame around their body image?
Yeah, you're not alone. This is the condition most women are in. I mean, probably most people. And there's going to be a battle between what you know and what you feel for a while, right? We can know intellectually that our value is not from our appearance, but it doesn't turn off like a switch. Just because you're not able to feel it all the time doesn't mean you're not making progress. There is a different relationship with your body that's possible. You deserve to have that good relationship. Keep trucking.
So good. This has been so good today. Oh, goodness. I think it's going to be a really well downloaded episode and hopefully helps a lot of you guys out there. I'm sure there's more work to do. Just this is the beginning of having that conversation and awareness surrounding body shame and just your value, what your value is.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you for bringing such a sensitive conversation to light that is much needed with women and actually men too. So where can everybody get you on social
Yeah.
media?
So follow us on @Join Wavelength. Wavelength is an app that uses behavioral neuroscience and therapy tools, really diving into your feelings to help you change your relationship to food, heal those patterns that we've been talking about. And then we pair it with customized nutrition. So you can follow us at Join Wavelength. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, or check us out at wavelength.live/sisterhood. We got a special discount code for you listeners there. So if you want to download, there's tons of free stuff to do in the app. You can check it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank
And
you, Linda.
thanks everybody for listening today to this episode. Let us know what you think, what you feel, what you related to, and how these thoughts affected you today. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye. Keep on keeping on.